training and school plans for student achievement, our 2-day workshop. Today is day 1. And before we get started, I wanted to acknowledge during this week of the administrator, the dedication and support that you give to students, staff, and families, especially with the federal programs. All the work that you do, like attending this 2-day training, is ultimately for the students, and we thank you for that. Let me introduce myself. I'm Adrienne Balcazar, and we're happy that you are attending our 2-day training on the Schoolsite Council Advisory Committees, and tomorrow, the school plans for student achievement. Just a reminder that today's workshop is designed as a training for trainers for district and/or school level staff with responsibilities for the support and oversight of the council and the development of school plans. You will be receiving information and resources to meet requirements for the council and the school plan for student achievement. Today, we will focus on the Schoolsite Council and Advisory Committee requirements and responsibilities. And then again, tomorrow we will look in depth at the process and requirements for the SSC. Today, you will hear from our team. And so I wanted to introduce our whole team today, starting with Jeannie Keith. I don't know if can you say hello so you'll pop up and everyone's screen?
Sure.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody, it's Jeannie. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Great. And Rachel Garcia?
Hello, everyone.
Anita Lomeli?
Hi, everyone.
Helen Choi?
Good afternoon, everyone.
And Debbie, we call her Debbie, Debbie Cano.
Hi, everybody.
And Augustine, I don't know that you have volume, but you are there. You can wave. Our newest member to our team. Okay, so as we get started, next slide, please. LACO is in the middle of changing the organization's website, and I believe we're going live today or tomorrow. So when you go to laco.edu, you might notice that the website is different. So bear with us, and actually with the whole organization, as we transition to this. So today's presentation, you can access it by clicking on the link in the chat to our Canvas page, and there hopefully is familiar to you. The presentation is, will have the agenda as you see here and the icons. Once you click on the icons, you can see the resources of the presentation, the recording, and the Q&A once we complete this and we have the Q&A available to everyone. We also do email that to you, so anyone that has registered for these workshop days, you will be receiving a copy of that Q&A through your email. Next slide, please. Today's topics for today's meeting include a review of the Schoolsite Council, including the selection and composition requirements and the responsibilities of the council. We will also review the roles and responsibility of the other advisory committees at both school and district level, and those with a role in the school in the SSC, as well as those required for the local control and accountability plan. Next slide, please. If you don't have a copy, you can purchase a binder with information and resources, some of which we will be referring to during our presentation. You can find the ordering information at the bottom of the slide here at the link. And we are also updating our 2023 Schoolsite Council binder. It's in the printing phase of our production. And so for those of you that already have a 2022 version, there have been really no major legal requirement changes since the 2022 version, but there just are some minor updates. So if you're wondering, should I get that or not, just know that you know, you can always reach out to us, but that's kind of, we just typically update it every year. But again, if you have last year's, you probably are fine, but we always encourage you to keep up to date. Okay, as usual, please place your questions in the chat and we will answer the questions and follow up with the written Q&A, as I said before. And to anyone who is registered to this workshop, and then again, it will be posted on the Canvas page as shown before. And now I will turn it over to Anita, who will start us on the purpose, composition, and the role of the Schoolsite Council.
All right, well, thank you and good afternoon, everyone. In this section of the presentation, Helen and I will be presenting Schoolsite Council requirements, including roles and responsibilities, composition, and selection. Next, perfect. But before we get into the core of Schoolsite Council, we'll ease our way in with a quick poll in the chat. Sometimes we're asked which is the correct way to spell Schoolsite in Schoolsite Council. Is Schoolsite spelled as one compound word, as an example A, or is it spelled as two separate words, as an example B? We'd like to know which way you think is correct, so please take a moment to let us know your answer in the chat. There are no prizes for being correct today, just ample satisfaction for the rest of the day. I see a lot of people already putting things in. All right. Thank you, and let's go to the next slide. And I saw some people who had A and B. Well, dating back to the 1970s, Ed Code spells Schoolsite as one compound word, but LEAs often spell it as two separate words, hence the acronym SSC. Just know that there is no right or wrong way to compound the word or not. The choice is yours. If your answer was A or B, or you had A and B, you are correct. And so for the duration of this training, we will use the compound word version to keep in line with Ed Code. Nevertheless, no matter how the word is spelled in your LEA or your schools, the purpose of the council remains the same. And so what is the purpose of Schoolsite Council? A great place to begin to answer this question is with why. Why establish a Schoolsite Council? Policymakers and researchers across the country agree that those who are involved with schools and students on a day-to-day basis, principals, teachers, parents, other school personnel, and students themselves can make some of the best decisions for their schools. That is why, as legislation has been added, amended, or repealed over the past 50 years, the establishment of Schoolsite Councils under specific circumstances have remained steadfast in California's Ed Code. A word of caution and hopefully inspiration: when seen only as a requirement per Ed Code, Schoolsite Councils can be simply a compliance mandate that satisfies a what and a how. On the other hand, if we think about a Schoolsite Council inside out and first describe it with our why, we can inspire others in our school communities to view and join a Schoolsite Council with purpose, with cause, and with belief. Beginning with our why inevitably leads to decision-making on the part of the council that can greatly and positively impact the education of its students and school community. Thinking back to my very first administrator training here at LACO with Bonnie McFarland, when I first became a principal, I clearly remember the quote that was presented at the onset of the training. And here it is: a vision without a plan is just a dream. A plan without a vision is just drudgery, but a vision with a plan can change the world. Successful Schoolsite Councils are more than a rubber stamp committee or a reproduction of the same. They know why a school does what it does, they believe in the programs it offers, and they inspire the school community to implement and monitor those programs with the intention of transforming the lives of students it serves. Their impact on the entire school community can be life-changing and thus define their purpose. So throughout this presentation, we will review the what Schoolsite Council is. We will review how to compose it according to Ed Code. But nevertheless, if we keep the why of a Schoolsite Council at the center of our transformative purpose, we will inspire its members and positively impact the lives of students and generations to come. So when is a school site council required? Although all school sites are able to form advisory councils or committees on their own, there are specific circumstances when the formation and implementation of a school site council is required by law. Per Ed Code Part 38, Section 65000B, a school site council is required when a school operates a program funded through the consolidated application and when that program requires a school plan for student achievement, also known as SSC or SPSA. LEAs ensure in the consolidated application that the SPSA has been prepared in accordance with the law and that school site councils have developed and approved a SPSA for each school participating in programs funded through the CONAP process. In case you're not familiar with it, the consolidated application, also lovingly known as the CONAP, is an agreement between the LEA and the California Department of Education for the distribution of categorical funds from various federal programs. An LEA is defined by Ed Code Section 6400A as a county office of education, a school district, or a charter school. The CONAP has two parts: the spring submission, which is due each June, and the winter submission, which is due each February. For those of you who are charged with the application process for your LEA and who experienced the CONAP in 2022 and 2023, you know that these dates are more or less. Sometimes spring turns into summer and winter really means spring, but all in all, there are two submissions. Part 1 in the spring documents participation in federal grant programs for the upcoming year and provides assurances that the LEA will comply with the legal requirements of each program it applies for. If you're wondering what you're promising to do upon receipt of funds, you can click on the link provided on this slide. Here you will find the assurances for all available federal programs. Money, usually always, comes with strings attached. Part 2 in the winter contains LEA entitlements for each funded program. And for each federal program entitlement, LEAs allocate funds for the program as indicated by the program requirements. The expenditure budget pages in the school plan for student achievement must match the CONAP school site allocation page in the winter submission. And so exactly which programs are we talking about? This slide shows the federal programs that are included and distributed through the CONAP. We have Title I Part A, Part C, Part D, Title II Part A, Title III Part A, Title IV Part A and B, Title V Part B, and Title VI Part A. Please keep in mind your district or school may not be participating in all of these federal programs. Most of what we will be referencing is in regards to School Site Council and the SPSA today has to do with the Title I program. Currently, no state programs are funded through the CONAP. In the past, we have had some state programs funded through the CONAP, such as EIA SEE and EIA LEP funding, for those of you who might recall these programs. However, please note that Assembly Bill 716 from 2018 does allow for the possibility of future state programs being funded through the CONAP. Okay, and so now back to school site councils. If required to establish one by the federal program granted through the consolidated application, such as Title I, or if your school was identified for CSI, TSI, ATSI under Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA, Ed Code is very specific on the roles and responsibilities of a school site council. First, a school site council is required to develop and approve the school plan for student achievement. This process involves annually reviewing and updating the contents of the plan, including proposed expenditures of funds allocated to the school through the consolidated application, and the local control accountability plan, if any. In addition, the SPSA must be developed with the review, certification, and advice of the school's English Learner Advisory Committee, the ELAC, if applicable. Next, The school site council approves the SIPSA for their school and then recommends the SIPSA to the local governing board or body for approval. Additionally, the school site council is responsible for annually developing the comprehensive school safety plan unless this task is delegated to a school safety planning committee that meets Ed Code requirements. These requirements will be discussed in detail later in the presentation. And so who makes up the school site council? In the next slides, we'll be taking a look at school site council requirements related to composition and selection. The school site council is a selected group of school site representatives selected by their peer group and is made up of school staff, parents, possibly community members, and at the secondary level, students as well. Members of the school site council represent the composition of the school's population. One group of the school site council is school site staff and includes classroom teachers selected by classroom teachers employed at the school. Other school personnel employed at the school who are not teachers selected by other personnel employed at the school are also part of this group. The school principal or their designee is also included here. And in the staff group, classroom teachers must represent the majority of persons in this group. The second group completing the council includes parents of pupils attending the school selected by parents of pupils attending the school and or other members of the school community selected by parents of the pupils attending the school. As mentioned at the secondary level, students also make up the composition of the council and must be selected by their peers as well. These two groups together make up the school site council, always ensuring parity between the two groups just mentioned. So these next slides provide an alternative visual for school site council compositions because it can get confusing. At an elementary school, the school site council shall be composed of two groups. School staff members shown here in light blue and parent and or community members in dark blue representing parity between the two groups. That is equal number of members between the school staff and the parent community members. Here, using this visual, you can see that half of the school site council must be composed of school staff, which includes the principal or their designee, classroom teachers employed at the school, and other school personnel employed at the school who are not classroom teachers. The classroom teachers selected must also constitute the majority of the school staff members. Given that the classroom teachers have to make up the majority of staff members on the council, the minimum number of teachers required is 3. The other half of the school site council must be composed of parents of pupils attending the school and or other members of the school community. Again, per Ed Code, the number of parents and or community members selected must equal the number of school staff members selected. This means that the minimum number of school site council members at the elementary level is 10. 1 principal and their designee, 1 other school personnel, 3 classroom teachers, that's 5, and then 5 parent and or community members. Please note that the principal or their designee is automatically a part of the school site council. No election is required for principals. At the secondary level, the school site council must be composed of the school staff member group and the parent and or community and student members. The staff composition requirements for secondary school are the same as the staff composition requirements for the elementary school. So school staff members must include the principal, their designee, classroom teachers employed at the school, and other school personnel employed at the school who are not teachers. And still, classroom teachers selected must also constitute the majority of the school staff members. On the other half of the council composition, at secondary schools, it includes parents of students attending the school or other members of the school community and students attending the school. The minimum number of school site council members for secondary school is also 10. You can have 1 principal or their designee, 1 school personnel, 3 classroom teachers, and the other 5 members who include parents / could be and or community members and students. In years past, parity was required between the parents and the community member group and students, but this is no longer the case. Thus, it is possible to have at very least, for example, 2 student members and 3 parents and or community members on the council. Or you could have 1 student and 4 parents and community members. Remember, though, that secondary schools must have at least 1 student on the council. And also remember that you must also have at least 1 parent or community member on the council. All members of the council are selected by their respective peer group, and achieving parity between the staff members of the council and the group consisting of parents and or community members and students is required by law. Here is another example, keeping in mind that the composition requirements were shared for elementary and secondary schools on the previous slide. This chart displays a few options for school site council compositions. And so you can see that at an elementary school, you can have 10, and as long as there is parity between the 2 sites, the minimum number of people on the council is 10. The school site council can be larger than 10 as long as it meets the composition requirements, including parity or equal number of members of staff and parent community members at the elementary level, and equal number of members of staff and community, parent and community and student members at the secondary level. Thus, with a 12-member school site council, you can see that there must be 6 people on the staff side and 6 on the parent community and student group. Also in this scenario, you can see that there must be 4 classroom teachers to ensure classroom teachers make up the majority of the staff side. Please note that middle school with 6th, 7th, and 8th grades may, but are not required to, include pupil representation on the school site council. Likewise, junior high schools with just 7th and 8th grade also have the option to include students or not. High schools must include students on their councils. Okay, that was a lot. Next, Helen will take over with some additional information about members.
Thank you, Anita. We will now go more in depth into each member of the SSC. As Anita mentioned, the principal or his or her designee is the only member of the school site council who is not elected. The principal or designee has voting rights on the school site council, however, may not veto any decisions made by the council or make changes to the approved school plan without the approval of the council. The role of the principal on the school site council is to set the vision and provide the school context, as well as provide information and resources to support the council with the development and implementation of the school plan. The principal should support the work of the council by leading from the side, while also ensuring that the decisions made by the council align with school and district policies and vision. Although Ed Code allows for principal designee to serve on the school site council, it is recommended that the principal serve on the school site council. Some of the benefits to the principal serving on the council are that it sends a message that the work of the SSC and the development of the SPSA are important, and also demonstrate the value of shared decision making. The principal also plays an important role in ensuring alignment between the school and the district's goals and priorities. It also provides the opportunity for principal to build relationship with parents and the community, and the principal also plays a key role in linking the strategies in the school plan to student learning. We sometimes get questions on who are considered classroom teachers or which staff are included in other school personnel. Classroom teachers are those who provide direct instruction for full time of employment. So for example, you may have intervention teachers that provide direct instruction full time. So they could be included as classroom teachers. Or you might have an intervention teacher that provides direct instruction part of the day and support with PLC or professional development on the other half of the day. So these teachers would be considered as other school personnel because they don't provide direct instruction full time. Other school personnel basically includes any employee at the school who is not a classroom teacher, such as assistant principals, counselors, clerical staff, custodians, yard supervisors, or instructional coaches. There's sometimes confusion that other school personnel only applies to classified staff. And this is not the case because certificated personnel who are not classroom teachers, such as counselors, may serve in the other school personnel category. Your board policy or bylaws should also address this so that it's consistent throughout the district. Parent members of the school site council includes all parents or guardians of students enrolled in the school. The only exception to this is that parents who are also employed at the school in which their child attends may not serve in the parent group side, but can serve on the staff side. If the parent is employed by the district, but does not work at the school site where their child attends, then the parent may serve on the parent side. A community member is a member of the school community who is not employed by the school and is not a parent or guardian of a student attending that school. This should also be defined in the SSC bylaws or district policy. It's also important to note that community members have to be elected by parents of students attending the school, and therefore community members cannot vote for SSC candidates. As mentioned, at the secondary level, students are required to serve on the parent community student group member side. The option to serve on the school site council must be open to any student enrolled in the school, meaning that the school or the district cannot set additional qualification for membership. Student members on the SSC must be elected by the entire student body, and the election must identify the responsibilities to serving on the council. So, next slide, please. I have a pop quiz. Ready? Hold your answers. Okay. Mrs. Jones has a daughter who is currently in 3rd grade at Sunnyside Elementary School. Mrs. Jones is working as a noon supervisor at the same school where her daughter attends. Which group will Mrs. Jones be representing on the SSC if selected? A, parent, B, staff, C, community member, or D, she can choose whichever one she likes best. Put your answer in the chat. Okay. Next slide, please. That's right. Many of you got it. So the answer is B. Mrs. Jones is working as a staff at Sunnyside Elementary. The parents employed at the same school where the child attends may not serve on the parent side, but may serve on the staff side. Right. One more question. Johnny is running for ASB president. He's popular and well-liked by staff members, although only students will vote in the election. At Do Your Best High School, all candidates must maintain a 2.0 GPA or higher and have no prior discipline referrals. Can Johnny, if elected, also be the student member of the SSC as part of his ASB responsibilities? Put your answer in the chat. Thank you. And next slide, please. That's right. Many of you put B or no. The answer is B. As mentioned, SSC student representatives can be any student enrolled at the school without additional qualification for membership. For example, students cannot be excluded for having a low GPA to be a member or to vote. In addition, a student holding a particular office may not be assigned this role. And in this case, being ASB president doesn't make Johnny an automatic member of the SSC. Here are a few examples of things related to the selection of SSC members. Sorry, okay. I'm sorry, okay. I apologize. Per Ed Code, as mentioned previously, SSC members must be selected by their peers. This means that classroom teachers must be selected by classroom teachers, and other school personnel who are not classroom teachers must be selected by other school personnel who are not classroom teachers, and parent and community members must be selected by parents of students attending the school. And at the secondary level, students attending the school are selected by students attending the school. Since members must be selected by their peers, no seat on the SSC may be reserved for any group or individuals. Ed Code does not specify how many members are selected by their peers, so this can be done through how the members are selected by their peers. So this can be done through a ballot process or in an open meeting vote. Individuals may also self-nominate. For student members at the secondary level, a separate election must be held in which the entire student body has the opportunity to select student members. Ed Code does not specify how many students must be on the school site council, so it could be defined by your bylaws. As a reminder, parent members may not be employees at the school, so while the parent who teaches at their child's school cannot be selected to represent the parent side of the school site council, they could be selected to represent the staff side as a teacher. Some schools are also elect non-voting alternate members who are seated as voting members in the event of a midterm vacancy. So technically, alternate members are not official members and would not be included on your SSC roster or membership list unless there is a vacancy. This is to ensure continuity and avoids having to hold another election to fill the spot. This is something that should be addressed in your bylaws or district policy. Here are a few examples of things related to selection of SSC members that you may want to consider in your board policy or SSC bylaws. What is the process that will be used to select SSC members and officers? How long will SSC members and officers serve? For example, is it a 2-year term or for members, or is it a 1-year term for officers? What is the process for providing notice of election for each of the required groups? What are the responsibilities of the council? What are the responsibilities of the officers? Another consideration is a policy of non-discrimination. While not required, it is suggested that the board policy or SSC bylaws address these issues as questions come up about this all the time. We'll be taking another look at bylaws later in this presentation. Ed Code 65001 allows for some school site council exceptions for small schools. Schools with common site administrators may operate a shared school site council if the school has less than 300 students. Up to 3 schools with combined population of less than 1,000 students may operate a shared school site council if the schools have a shared campus, or if the schools have a geographic proximity to one another with similar student populations. With both of these exceptions, shared school site councils must still meet the composition requirements that were explained earlier in this presentation and specified in Ed Code 65000. Another exception is that schools with fewer than 300 pupils may operate a SSC that has all of the following: 1 principal, 1 teacher selected by teachers, 1 other school personnel selected by other school personnel, and 3 parents or community members selected by parents at the elementary level, or if a secondary school, then 2 parents or community members selected by parents and 1 student selected by students. For this exception to occur, it requires approval from your local governing board and the local bargaining unit. Additionally, a school district governing board or county board of education may request on behalf of the school site council that the state board grant a waiver for any provisions related to school site council. And finally, remember that the training for SSC members is necessary to ensure members understand their roles and responsibilities. This training needs to ensure the members understand their legal obligations and the requirements outlined in the Education Code for school site councils. Members need training on Green Act requirement to ensure that council follow the requirements for holding public school site meetings and conducting businesses at these meetings. Other possible training topics include bylaws, meetings and procedures, what Title I program is and the requirement for school-wide programs and targeted assistance programs, the purpose and use of state and federal program funds, how to analyze student achievement data, evidence-based instructional practices, and monitoring implementation and evaluating the effectiveness of the plan and strategies. The training topics really depend on what the needs for the school site councils are, and in order to help them to fulfill their legal responsibilities. Thank you. And now I'll turn it over to Debbie for advisory committees.
Thank you, Helen. Okay, so now we are going to talk about some advisory committees. Next slide, please. So the legal requirements are in place to ensure that the traditionally voiceless have a voice. But I want you to remember that legal requirements are the minimum that you are required to do. We want you to consider this And think about any of your endeavors and anything that you strive to do. You probably don't work to do the minimum and expect to yield excellence or just to get by. And as educators, it's likely that you rarely strive to achieve the minimum. And so as you go forward and you do this work, remember why these legal requirements are in place, and your approach to this work will make all the difference in the product that you yield. Minimum input will check the boxes. Strategic and purposeful interactions will develop partnerships and give your parents a voice. Next slide, please. So per Ed Code 52176B, an ELAC must be established in schools that have 21 or more English learners. And your ELAC responsibilities include advising your SSC on programs and services for English learners that are for inclusion on the SPSA, assisting in the development of a school-wide needs assessment, and efforts to make parents aware of the importance of attendance, and they should receive training. The ELAC must also have the opportunity to elect at least one member to the district DLAC. Next slide. When is the ELAC required? We said when there are 21 or more English learners enrolled in a school. What if there are only 19 students until February? And a family moves into the neighborhood and they have 2 new student siblings and they're both English learners. Well, now you've hit 21 and it's February. Well, yes, this is when you start your steps to establish your ELAC. You cannot wait until the start of the next school year and pray that somebody moves out of the neighborhood. That's when you begin. Step 1 is to determine the percentage of English learners in the school. And then next, you're going to determine the preliminary size of the committee. Your committee should be aligned to the percentage of English learners at the school. You would notify all the parents in the school of the elections and to the opportunity to serve on the ELAC. This is optional, but you might want to have a general information meeting explaining what an ELAC is and their purpose. Then you would conduct the parent elections, and only parents of English learners may vote. And lastly, you're going to convene the first meeting of your ELAC and train the members on their roles and responsibilities. Question we often get is, may the ELAC delegate its responsibilities to another site level committee such as the school site council? And yes, you can, but there are steps involved in that. Next slide, please. Okay, so there are specific steps that must be taken in order for the ELAC to get to delegate. So once an ELAC is convened, they may want to decide to remain a committee. If that's what they do, then they elect their members to serve on the DLAC. They meet 4 to 6 times a year, and they assume its roles and responsibilities. So that's how they function independently. If the ELAC votes to delegate its duties and responsibilities to the school site council, they must maintain minutes of that meeting where that decision was made. The SSC must meet the same composition that is required of the ELAC. So the percentage of parents needing to be English learners on an ELAC would also have to be met by that school site council. You would, the SSC would meet through the years and they would assume the ELAC roles and responsibilities and meet all of those requirements as well. If the ELAC decides to become a subcommittee of an existing advisory committee, which is also an option, you would maintain the meeting minutes from that initial meeting. The subcommittee elects a member to serve as the DLAC. Subcommittee meets 4 to 6 times throughout the year, and the subcommittee assumes the ELAC roles and responsibilities. So those are the options for the operation of an ELAC. Next slide, please. So the ELAC training is very important and it's required annually. The members must receive training and training materials to assist them in carrying out their required advisory responsibilities. Training must be planned in full consultation with the committee members. ELAC members must be trained on their roles and responsibilities. They should also receive training on the Green Act and bylaws and meeting procedures to ensure members know how to conduct an effective meeting. And as we all know, using the Green Act is not something that comes naturally to anyone. So practicing that and giving them training is really important for them. And it's also important to consider what might the ELAC need to know to advise on programs and services for English learners and the school plan. So you've got to consider what do they need to know in order to provide information on how to develop their needs assessment. And again, training must be planned in full consultation with its members. So it's important to work with your committee to determine their needs and plan their trainings accordingly. I mean, often we like to use our trainings annually every year, but it's important to discuss with each group of parents annually what they need and what they would like to hear. Okay, now we're moving on to DLAC, which is also a required committee. This is a district level committee. So it's the DLAC is the District English Learner Advisory Committee. And a DLAC is required when a school district has more than 50 English learners. The DLAC must be composed of a majority of parents of English learners. So each school will have a school level ELAC, and the DLAC is comprised of ELAC members who have been elected to serve on the DLAC. The DLAC has specific advisory responsibilities as well to advise the local governing board on the tasks on the screen that we have listed, which may be inform the training of the DLAC. Just like ELAC, they want to inform what they need to fulfill their responsibilities. They also would be advising on services for English learners, and at the district level, the EL master plan and the needs assessment. Also, the DLAC may serve a dual role and serve as the EL PAC for purposes of the LCAP, a development process, and the committee must then carry out the roles of both committees if they're going to serve in that capacity. Which is next slide. The DLAC must receive training materials and training to assist them in carrying out their required advisory responsibilities. And as with the ELAC at sites, training for DLAC must be planned in full consultation with its members, which means that you get input from them as well. Next slide. Ed Code requires the LEAs present the LCAP as part of the LCAP process to a parent advisory committee, which must include parents of students of ELs, foster youth, and low-income students. And every EL will need to convene a parent advisory committee or a PAC. For the LEAs that have 15% of English learners or at least 50 pupils who are ELs, they must also convene and present the LCAP to an English Learner Parent Advisory Committee, which is the EL PAC. And this is the committee that I said DLAC can also function in this capacity. There's no requirement to establish a new committee. DLAC can do this, but if it's decided that DLAC will function as the EL PAC, then those responsibilities of the DLAC will then continue, but the LCAP review and the fulfillment of the responsibilities to provide input and to have the presentation of the LCAP must be also fulfilled by that committee. So it should be clear within the LEA that the PAC and the EL PAC are two separate committees. Next slide, please. So suggestions for best practice. We often get questions about committee operation. And here are some suggestions for best practice. By no means is this an exhaustive list. Having bylaws will support smooth operation of the committee and provide protocol for addressing issues. For example, they're going to guide actions as issues arise, such as if a member stops attending, what do you do? If your bylaws are written in a way that they would address this and you follow that. If your bylaws don't address this, this is something that you would want to discuss as you revisit your bylaws and revise them annually. Then next is to provide your presentation and documents in English and the primary language of the families, as well as having a translation and interpretation provided during the meeting. This is a great practice, and not just for ELAC or DLAC. You want EL parents to feel welcome and get involved. This is an important bridge to provide their comfort with attending any parent meetings. Next is to schedule meetings when they're most convenient for parents. This is something you're going to have to also ask annually. Ask the parents and discuss the decision whether to hold meetings in the morning or in the afternoon, or maybe having to hold an AM and a PM for some meetings, or to vary your schedule so that you give both different parents opportunities to get involved. Another is to provide childcare for parents to attend meetings. This helps when parents have little ones, and it also is a little incentive to get a tiny bit of a break. If you have ever had a 2-year-old, an hour of a break with just talking to adults is a great great help. Next, also is to schedule the DLAC to precede the site ELACs. Now, this gives your site leaders foundation for their ELAC meetings, and it's taking the work off the shoulders of the principal, who's really going to appreciate it, giving them presentations prepared and already translated that they can then revise and fit their site needs, but it's giving them that jumping off place, and it's taking a lot of work off their hands. So it's a really good suggestion, and I know that your site leaders will appreciate that. And then this is a good one too. ELAC is not the Spanish PTA. So ELAC has a function and is not meant to operate as a PTA for EL parents. PTA is meant for all parents. If this is not the culture of a school, it is something that should be considered. Yes, the ELAC is an advisory committee, and it has specific duties and responsibilities. And then lastly, this question, what if no one wants to participate? We hear that often. Next slide, please. And if that's the case where you are finding that folks don't want to participate, what we want you to do is consider, reflect on these questions, talk to your groups, your teachers, and your classified staff. But how were invitations sent to parents? Did they receive phone calls? Were they sent in a language that was understandable? What is understood or misunderstood about participating in a committee? Do parents feel like it's going to be extra work, lots of hours? Do they understand really what this means and how valuable and important it is to have that voice in their child's education? What barriers have parents identified to participating? Have you asked parents, why don't you want to come? Phone calls from your bilingual community liaison to EL parents asking them might give you some really good insight. And then how welcoming is your culture? Who feels welcome? What makes some parents feel welcome while others do not? So those are questions that you want to ask yourself and ask your staff to reflect on in order to change that and make participation something that parents want to do and that they value. Okay, so that concludes my section. Now we're moving on to procedures, bylaws, and documents.
Hello again, everyone. Okay, so I'm happy to report that we're halfway through the presentation. All right, so next we're going to address the importance of having procedures and bylaws in place and maintaining adequate documentation. The success of a council's work is largely dependent on having clear procedures that are understood by all at the beginning of the school year. Clear procedures can even the playing field by allowing all voices to be heard, especially in groups such as the Schoolsite Council, where there may be different levels of knowledge and experience with the content and processes being used. So let's delve in. Some of the procedures that must be followed are included in Ed Code 35147 and generally are referred to as the Green Act. Leroy F. Green, for whom the Green Act is named and pictured here on the bulletin board, was a state assembly member and state senator for 36 years in California. And in addition to legalizing bingo in California, he is known for the requirements set forth for school site councils, ELACs, DLACs, DACs, and PACs. The Green Act applies to school site councils and advisory committees and is less stringent than the Brown Act that applies to official decision-making groups, such as school boards or governing bodies. The Green Act outlines 6 key requirements for school site council and other committees listed on the slide. And so here are the 6. Number 1, all meetings must be open to the public and allow for public input. 2, meeting notice and agenda must be posted 72 hours in advance of the meeting. 3, notice and agenda must be posted at the school site or other appropriate places accessible to the public. For example, an outside bulletin board, the school marquee, the website, etc. 4, notice and agenda must include the date, the time, and the location of the meeting and the items to be discussed or acted upon. 5, action is limited to posted agenda items unless a unanimous vote finds a need for immediate action, and that need for the action came after the posting of the agenda. And 6, the public must be provided access to all materials discussed and or distributed at the meeting. And although we just spent a good amount of time on the GREEN Act, because it's what applies to the type of meeting that we're presenting here today, some of you may be wondering what the difference is between the GREEN Act and the Brown Act, which was briefly mentioned in the previous slide. And so we've provided you with a link on this slide to a handout that details the differences of those two acts for your information or for future reference. Okay, so continuing on, your agenda is set, notice of the meeting is posted, and now your council is ready to meet and conduct business. To be most effective, councils also need to follow rules of order or working agreements to provide parameters on how business is conducted. Rules of order also support equity on the council by ensuring that the voices of all are heard and no group or individual dominates the meetings. Councils often follow Robert's Rules of Order or some variation of those rules. Rules of order should support the work of the council and therefore need to be clear and not be overly complicated. The rules should be understood by all and may be referenced in your bylaws. Part of the training for Schoolsite Council members should include these meeting procedures. Because the Schoolsite Council meeting is a formal meeting, members should follow agreed upon procedures for conducting meetings. Robert's Rules of Order is the document most commonly used to guide the conduct of meetings. And although the full document is more than should be needed for Schoolsite Council meetings, an abbreviated set of the rules should suffice. And lastly, a parliamentarian may be selected to check the rules when questions or disputes arise. Now, many questions and disputes that arise regarding how the Schoolsite Council or the ELAC or the DLAC operate and make decisions aren't addressed in law. It's not that specific. And we often get calls when there's disagreement on the council or something is called into question and we're asked, what is the correct response? And our answer usually is to ask, what do your bylaws say? Bylaws are the internal rules that govern how your council or committee is run. And although bylaws are not required, they do serve a very important role in keeping your council or committee running smoothly. So there are some basic things that should be included in your bylaws, such as how are vacancies filled? What officers will your council have and what role will they play? Additionally, your bylaws can outline duties of officers and council members and include the process for how and when they are selected. Are they selected for a one-year term? Is it a two-year term? Are certain members selected on alternating years, or do you get a new council every year? Bylaws can include when and how quorum is reached. What happens if a member is MIA for consecutive meetings? Who can vote? How long is a member's term? What happens if a member resigns or moves out of state? Hindsight is 20/20, and your bylaws can also include rules based on issues that have arisen in the past. In addition to bylaws developed and updated by each school site council, the district may outline procedures for all councils to follow as well. This may include things like the process for conducting elections. These could be in your bylaws or outlined in district policies, but such procedures should be in writing. And so what documentation should you keep? Next slide, please. What documentation should you keep on site? Because documentation of school site council actions and procedures is part of compliance monitoring, it is important to ensure that it is maintained and accurately reflects school site council actions. How the school site council annually evaluates the plan, how the school site council obtains input from the ELAC regarding the plan are just a couple of examples of some of the actions that should be reflected in agendas and minutes. Also, keep evidence of the process and the results of the election. If an election is contested, it becomes especially important to have such documentation. It is best practice to keep documentation for at least 3 years. And yes, that can include a manila envelope with ballots filed away somewhere in your file cabinet or under your desk. To ensure school site council meetings address all requirements in law, it is important to provide councils with direction regarding the content of the meetings and to ensure that required actions are captured in the council's minutes. Providing a standard agenda and a format for note-taking will help assist councils in remaining on task and maintaining the documentation they will need whenever programs are reviewed. So it is important to determine who is responsible for maintaining documentation for school site council, where is that documentation kept, and who reviews it to make sure that it is accurate and complete. So let's take a look at agendas and minutes. You will see later that some of the evidence requests for federal program monitoring calls for meeting minutes and agendas. Therefore, it is important to consider how minutes will be taken, who is taking the minutes, and how they are trained. Some LEAs provide templates for agendas or minutes to assist schools. Another consideration is how agendas and minutes are reviewed and maintained. Someone at the LEA who is knowledgeable about school site council requirements and the FPM instrument tool should periodically review school site council minutes to ensure they are accurately reflecting actions by the council. You also want a system for maintaining documentation, so when it's needed for review purposes, it's easily accessible. Having schools post or review minutes after each meeting and reviewing them on a regular basis should be part of the district process for oversight of the school site councils. Given the importance of the minutes to program compliance, it may be advisable to have the school secretary or office manager or someone with experience taking meeting minutes to be assigned that task on the council. The minutes from the prior meeting should be reviewed and approved by the council at each meeting to ensure they're accurately reflecting the meeting content previously discussed. And so what's included in the meeting minutes? As mentioned in the previous slide, some LEAs provide school sites with templates for agendas that may include some of the items above. The meeting minutes should reflect date, place, and time of the meeting, roster of the persons or members in attendance, pertinent actions and information, all motions, whether they are adopted or rejected, the name of the person making the motion, first motion, second motion, points of order and appeals, elections, name of the nominees and election results should also be recorded, the name of the secretary or recorder submitting the minutes for review. The minutes should reflect school site council SIPSA approval and the ELAC review and consultation advice. And minutes should be kept on file for future reference and review. Now, during COVID, next slide, please. During COVID, and I don't mean to bring back trauma during the week of the school administrator because I love school administrators, but many LEAs established procedures for conducting meetings in a virtual format for school site council and ELAC meetings. And some are using a combination of both, where members log in virtually from a remote location or they log in with some members of the council at the school site. And CDE has indicated that there's no prohibition on virtual meetings. They're okay, especially if they support and encourage participation. However, all requirements for meeting access and other meeting requirements still apply. So in planning for virtual meetings, the following should occur. Email the agenda and the virtual meeting link to all the families and staff at least 72 hours before the meeting. Ensure the email is translated into the required languages. Ensure email provides clear instructions on how people can call into the meeting if video is not accessible and how to provide comments. Ensure it is clear in communication that public comments are strictly related to those items on the agenda. Things to consider as well if you choose this route is consider translation needs for virtual meeting. Ensure quorum by using a roll call and displaying the login of council members on the virtual platform. Now, when using a virtual meeting platform for Schoolsite Council or ELAC meeting, for example, it's important to maintain documentation of the meeting. That documentation requirement doesn't go away. And so some ways this documentation can be collected include recording an audio or video of the meeting. Make sure that you have permissions. For a sign-in sheet, consider using a visual or a verbal roll call. Council members may have the responsibility for taking a screenshot or a printout of the participant gallery. You know how you can find that there, and attaching it to the minutes in lieu of a sign-in sheet. To document action taken by the council, consider documenting members' vote on action items in the chat, so you have it in writing, and keeping a screenshot of it. And you can add that to your minutes as well. Additionally, you may consider collecting electronic signatures and following up with a wet signature when the parent is back on campus to drop off their child or pick them up. Conducting virtual meetings or utilizing a hybrid model is not a requirement. However, if your LEA sees advantages to conducting meetings in this way, we hope that these suggestions to meet requirements help support your LEA with parent involvement and engagement at meetings. Okay, thank you, everyone. And next up is Rachel.
Thank you, Anita. Good afternoon, everyone. So in this next section, we'll be taking a look at the requirements for comprehensive school safety plans. So California Education Code requires every kindergarten through grade 12 school, public and public charter, including community and court schools, to develop and maintain a comprehensive school safety plan designed to address campus risks, prepare for emergencies, and create a safe, secure learning environment for students and school personnel. Additionally, all school staff must be trained on the components of the safety plan. And so this means that the updated school safety plans should be reviewed and practiced regularly by all certificated and classified staff. And you can find the requirements related to comprehensive school safety plans in Education Code sections 32280 through 32289.5. So as Anita mentioned earlier in this presentation, the development of the Comprehensive School Safety Plan is a responsibility of the School Site Council. However, the School Site Council has the option to delegate this responsibility to a school safety planning committee that meets specific composition requirements in Education Code. So if delegating this responsibility, the committee would need to include the principal or his or her designee, one teacher who is a representative of the certificated employee organization, one parent whose child attends the school, one classified employee who is a representative of the classified employee organization, and then any other members if desired. And also, if the school is not required to have a school site council, then this responsibility would also be fulfilled by the School Safety Planning Committee made up of the members just noted. So when developing or updating the safety plan each year, the School Site Council or Safety Planning Committee is required to consult with the representative from a law enforcement agency, a fire department, and other first responder entities. And also, any updates made to the plan during the year must be shared with these entities. And so the last thing that I'd like to note is that if a school district has fewer than 2,501 units of average daily attendance, the district may develop one district-wide comprehensive school safety plan for all schools within the district. So in that case, the district-wide safety plan would be developed by the district rather than a school site council or a school safety planning committee. So the contents of the Comprehensive School Safety Plan are outlined in Education Code 32282. And so there are many required components that must be included in the plan. And there are also some components specified in education code that are encouraged or recommended. But everything listed on this slide, as well as the next slide, falls under what's required to be included in the plan. So the plan must include an assessment of the current status of school crime committed on the campus and at school-related functions, which may include a review of data such as office referrals, suspension and expulsion data, attendance rates, or even SARB data. The safety plan must include strategies and programs that provide and maintain a high level of safety, as well as address the school's procedures for complying with current safety laws, including child abuse reporting procedures, disaster procedures, procedures to allow a public agency, including the American Red Cross, to use school buildings, grounds, and equipment for mass care. Also, suspension and expulsion policies and procedures to notify teachers of dangerous students. So continuing with the required components, the safety plan must include the discrimination and harassment policy. If the school has adopted a school-wide dress code that prohibits students from wearing gang-related apparel, then that must also be included. Procedures for safe ingress and egress of students, parents, and staff. School discipline rules and procedures. Procedures for conducting tactical responses to criminal incidents. And also procedures to prepare for an active shooter based on local needs. So it's required that schools update and adopt the plan each year by March 1st. But prior to adopting the plan, the school site council or safety planning committee must present the plan at a public meeting at the school site to allow for public opinion regarding the plan. And so this may occur at a regular parent meeting at the school. There are also specific notification requirements in education code that the school site council or safety planning committee must notify in writing specific persons and entities, if available, of the public meeting. And so you can see those persons or entities listed there on the slide. And so additionally, the plan must be submitted to the school district for approval. There is not a specific deadline in statute for school district or county office to approve the plan. However, the CDE recommends that plans be approved by the district or the county at the next board meeting after the approval by the school, or as soon as practicable before October 15th. And the reason that it's recommended before October 15th is that school districts and county offices must notify the CDE by October 15th of each year of any schools that have not complied with the comprehensive school safety plan requirements. Another important thing to note is that the approved school safety plan must be readily available for public inspection if requested. And so some considerations for this include posting it on the school or district website, or maintaining a binder with a copy of the plan and related materials for inspection at the school site office. So you'll want to develop an internal process for public inspection of the plan, including identifying appropriate staff to assist with this process. Also, just keep in mind that sensitive tactical response information should be redacted and not made public. So the CDE has a number of resources available to support schools in developing and updating school safety plans, including their comprehensive school safety plan webpage, and also a comprehensive school safety plan checklist. And so you can see the link to the webpage and the checklist on the slide, and we've also included the checklist handout with our materials for today's meeting. And so the CDE webpage provides lots of information and resources, including the requirements for comprehensive school safety plans, as well as recommended components for the plans and best practice considerations. And so the CDE also hosted a webinar last year in September of 2022 on the Comprehensive School Safety Plan requirements. And so we've also included a link to the recording of this webinar on the slide. So the last thing that we wanted to share is a few of the best practice considerations recommended by CDE for districts and schools. So for districts, some best practices include assigning a liaison to schools to oversee the school safety planning, implementation, and emergency management. Also coordinating emergency response drills with local first responder agencies, providing guidance, training, support, and oversight to schools, as well as providing a template for the school safety plan. And then some best practices for schools include discussing the school safety plan and role-playing possible scenarios at both certificated and classified staff meetings. Also conducting lockdown, shelter-in-place, and other evacuation drills. And ensuring that all staff and substitute teachers receive information and materials related to school safety procedures. So again, these are just a few examples, and several other best practices are available on the CDE webpage mentioned on the previous slide. And so that concludes this section. I will now turn it over to Adrian for FPM.
Thank you, Rachel. All right, well, we're on the home stretch of day one's training. Today, you've heard about the legal requirements for school site councils and advisory committees, and this is like everything you must do. So now we're going to take a look at the process of oversight and monitoring of what is actually happening. What is FPM, or Federal Program Monitoring? There are federal and state laws that require the California Department of Education to monitor the implementation of federal programs. The LEAs are responsible for creating and maintaining these programs, and they must meet the minimum fiscal and programmatic requirements. The state, on the other hand, is responsible for conducting the reviews in order to ensure that LEAs are spending the funds as required by law. The FPM process consists of 3 components. Your participation in the 3 parts depends on which type of review format you've been selected for. There's 2 kinds, either online or on-site. So part 1 is the review of specific evidence via the California Monitoring Tool, or otherwise known as the CMT. And part 1 applies to everyone that has been selected for an on-site or online review. So, and part 2 and 3 apply only to on-site reviews, which include classroom observations of the program implementation and interviews with the administrators, staff that are paid through Title I, and your SSC and ELAC. The FPM reviews are organized as a continuous cycle. This table here shows the FPM cycle, and that is every 2 years, online and on site. All of the LEAs in the state are placed in one of the 4 groups, or what they call cohorts, A, B, C, or D. So for the 23-24 school year, you can see here that cycle B is up for on-site review and cycle D is up for an online review. You might notice that for this year, there are only 116 LEAs being reviewed compared to the past years of 126. And we know that CDE has indicated that some of the reviewers are covering multiple regions, so therefore they have reduced the amount of reviews by 10 statewide. The FPM reviews require evidence to be gathered and uploaded to the CMT for the state FPM reviewer to see. The evidence that needs to be uploaded can be found in the FPM instruments. Each federal program has its own instrument, such as the compensatory education and the EL program. The compensatory education and English learner instrument both contain many items that are related to school site councils and advisory committees. The link at the bottom of the slide will take you to CDE's webpage, which has all of the FPM instruments available for download. If we take a look at the top 5 non-compliant CE items from the 22-23 FPM reviews up through March 2023, you can see that 3 of the 5 most frequently non-compliant items directly involve parents. The most frequent findings are starred, and they are CE2, school parent and family engagement. Second is CE19, school site evaluation of program effectiveness. And fourth is CE5, school site composition. The evidence that is requested for CE2 are 5 items: school parent and family engagement policy, the school parent compact, the joint development of the school level parent and family engagement policy and compact, school records of activities for building capacity for parents and family engagement, and the actual distribution of the school level parent and family engagement. In CE2, you could be found non-compliant because the requirements for CE2 were not carried out because there was confusion between CE1, which is the LEA parent and family engagement requirements, and the sites requirements. The school parent and family engagement policy did not address the elements required for Title I schools, or there was no evidence showing the policy and compact were actually jointly developed with parent groups. And there was no evidence showing the school level parent and family engagement policy was being annually distributed to parents and families of students served under Title I, Part A. The next item in the CE instrument was CE19, school site evaluation of program effectiveness. The evidence that is required and requested is documentation showing that your school site council participated in the evaluation process. In a school-wide program, this would be site level Title I program evaluation and any other evidence that you have, you can collect. And this would include evaluation reports and in your school-wide program. For targeted assistance, the school and for school-wide programs, evidence showing progress monitoring and program revisions. So in either case, you're showing that you evaluated it, you applied it to your actions in your school plan, and moving forward, are you eliminating, are you modifying, are you adding? So again, showing the documentation of this process is evidence that would need to be uploaded in the CMT. So for the FPM review. So school site evaluation of program effectiveness may be non-compliant if there was no evidence that the Title I actions were evaluated for effectiveness. This would include the level of implementation. It would be any supporting data or modifications or new actions. Also, if it was submitted, the SIPSA was submitted inadequately described, or the evaluation was inadequately described, or it doesn't show the implementation and impact of the Title I funded actions and services, this could be a finding. Also, if there was no evidence that the school site council was even involved in this analysis and evaluation process, if this would look like there would be no school site council agendas uploaded, no minutes or no interviews that can confirm that the school site was actually involved in this process. And for targeted assistance school program, the LEA does not show monitoring of the targeted student progress. So these are all items that could happen if that's not done, it would be a finding. In CE19, these 2 areas may need a reflection on your systems and practice. In the annual review and analysis of your Title I program, you might ask, how is analysis included and reported? And What is the involvement of your school site council in this process? Also, what can you do to ensure that your school site council is involved in the annual review and analysis of your Title I program? Not just the year if you're being FPM, but every year. How is it systematized at your schools? Next slide, please. Here are some evaluation questions that you can use to address this part of the process. What points of data do you gather? How was the program or activity faithfully implemented? Was the analysis of the data? What is it? How effective was the plan? What should be changed to make this activity effective if it wasn't effective? And the last one, CE5, school site council composition. This used to be kind of a top ranking one. It did move down, so this is good, but we still have districts that are still finding it difficult to be compliant with school site council composition. And we do get many questions throughout the year about this. So again, knowing what's required and what options you have is critical. So the evidence that is requested for this particular item is records of your school site council peer selection, your school site council roster with membership categories, and the actual school plan for student achievement. You must also have in this section, if you could go back, please, thanks. You must also have completed sample ballots with peer selection showing the results for each membership. And also the completed sample ballots must include the name of the school site council membership category, such as staff, teachers, parents, and the date of peer selection. And just to note that blank ballots do not meet the legal requirement. So as Anita said, you might have to dig up those ballots from under your desk or chair. You might also provide the school site council roster with membership categories. And on that, you would indicate whether they're a staff member, parent, community, or student group, and then a copy of the SPSA. In CE5, school site council composition, during an FPM review, you might be found non-compliant if the composition is incorrect, or there is insufficient evidence or no evidence of peer selection, or some of the members were not selected by their peers. So for example, you might have teachers that you have proof that they were selected by their peers, but perhaps you don't have documentation that the students were, or parents. Also, if there were no election procedures, the election procedures were not followed, or seats were being reserved for individuals or positions or groups. For example, on the secondary level, an ASB president or student officer cannot be automatically given the school site council role as part of their duties. This is not allowable, as shared earlier. Also, if there was not a written process for replacing members unable to fulfill their terms. So if you don't have a viable composition and you are FPM'd and you say, well, many of our members, moved away out of state, well, and you don't have a viable SSC. So therefore, you really can't be spending your Title I funds moving forward. So it's important that you do have bylaws so that you can memorialize and follow the process for filling in those seats to have a legal, viable school site council. And lastly, if you have perhaps like a parent who is employed at the same site as their child and was on the school site council representing the parent side or the community as a community member or a parent member. So again, these are typical and actual reasons why the findings were quite commonly found in CE5, school site council composition. Here's a table with all the required documentation needed for the review of the records of school site council peer selection. It might be easier for you to put this in this graphic organizer so that you can keep track of all of the components for each of the group. So each school site council must have a selection process to allow your educational partners to select their peers. You must always maintain the evidence of the nomination forms and notices for the classroom teachers and other personnel, parents, community members, and students at the secondary level, ballots with the names of nominated candidates, and your meeting minutes, online voting records, etc. Everything should be noted, collected, and it's good to have a checkoff list. And just keep in mind that with anything having to do with students' names, they must be redacted before uploading, only for, not just on the ballots, but any document that you upload to CMT. Because again, these are documents that are, the public has access to public records. So again, always remember to redact student names for the privacy and the well-being of students. In CE5, the common school site council composition issues, as mentioned before through the bylaws they're not having them, we often get the questions again, as stated earlier, about parent members, who can be a parent member, or about parity. Remember, parity must be maintained between the school and the parent community members on the school site council. And lastly, teacher majority. Teachers must make up the majority of the school side, the school group serving on the school site council. So when issues arise in dealing with these issues, what can you do? What does ESSA say? And lastly, what do your bylaws say? So how you prepare your school site council and ELAC for FPM, we often get calls about what kind of questions do we prepare them with. And so we know that whether you are being selected for an FPM or not, it's really good to have these questions as part of your practice with your school site councils and your ELAC, just so that if they were selected, it's common knowledge, common vocabulary, terminology, and it's nothing to fear or be nervous about, because knowing when working with school site councils in the past, there'd be a lot of calming of the nerves prior to, preparing for an FPM. So we wanted to offer this, just schedule mock interviews within the training of your SSCs and your ELACs. So here's some sample questions for the mock interviews. And again, such as basic questions about being a member of the school site council and ELAC, or what kind of training have they had? What is their involvement in the development, monitoring, and review process of the SIPSA? And what opportunities have been given for input on the site parent and family engagement policy and the school parent compact? Here are some final thoughts as we end today's session with 1 minute to go. How are your parents and families engaged in school activities? How is your school site council involved in the development, monitoring, and revision of SIPSA activities? And how is your evidence and interviews? What would it reflect? What would be said? And what would, so again, making sure that this is not an afterthought, but a forethought. So we want to thank you today for joining us, and want to remind you to join us tomorrow from 2:30 to 4:30 for part 2 of our 2-day training. And tomorrow's focus will be on school plans for student achievement. Here's the topics that we will be covering. And thank you. Please take the time to provide us with any feedback, either by using the link or the QR code. And we want you to know we really do review the feedback, and we use it to guide our future planning. So again, we want to thank you for joining us, and we will meet back here tomorrow at 2:30, same time, and same, I believe, Zoom link. We will leave the chat open for a few more minutes to, if you have any last minute questions, you can place them in the chat. We want you to have a great afternoon, and we'll see you tomorrow.